Call the meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. We are missing our chair and our vice chair for the evening, and so Commissioner Evans has kindly stepped up and offered to act as the chair this evening, and he will take over the meeting from here. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Evans.
Present.
Commissioner Cooper.
Present.
Commissioner Vaterlaus.
Here.
We have 3 commissioners present, which is not a quorum for any voting matters on this evening's agenda. Commissioners Campbell, Gordon, Niblin, and Brown are absent.
Could we get a salute to the flag by Commissioner Cooper?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And could we get some, Christopher, I guess we just go ahead with the rest of it?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we'll proceed through any items that are, would require a vote of the commission since we do not have a quorum. So that would take us to oral communications and then to the presentation for this evening.
Could I get anybody want to make a move on the order of agenda?
Mr. Chair, we can't
we
vote
can't
on
vote.
any.
No, we can't.
vote
Yeah,
on
that's true. Yeah. So, okay, so scratch all that. Approval of minutes, no. How about designation of liaison?
None is required. Thank you.
Thank you. And so that brings us right down to oral communications. Public hearings, yeah.
I don't think we have any.
Yeah.
Anyone?
So anyway, this portion of the agenda is available to the public to address the Plan Commission on any issues within the subject matter justification of the commission that is not on the agenda. At this, the time will be allowed for any speaker will be 3 minutes. I have no cards in front of me. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Seeing no, okay, I see one hand. For number 3, no, that'll be fine. We may not, if we don't get quorum, we won't even get to that point, but no, this will be anything that's not on the agenda. So seeing no hands, I will close oral communications, and no consent items, and we'll go straight to the presentation of the fiscal year 2015-16 adopted city budget by Assistant City Manager Lorenzo Hines. Lorenzo?
Sir, Commission Chair Evans and members of the Commission, thank you so much for allowing me to speak here tonight. Looking forward to providing good information to you all. So what we have here is an overview of the 2015-2016 budget. Although we're going to focus mainly on our general fund, we will speak to the budget in its entirety as well. So our mandate as we were putting together this budget was to make sure that we had a firm grasp of the city's fiscal circumstances, that we were able to identify challenges and any opportunities, that we developed a plan for long-term fiscal sustainability, and that we communicate our findings about our fiscal status in understandable terms, not accountant-like. We try to stay away from the technical stuff and make sure that our presentations are in a very transparent fashion. So let's talk about the city budget. There is a number of funds. We have 26 of them. However, the general fund tends to be the fund that gets the most attention. It is the biggest, and the general fund, the revenues tend to be from property taxes, sales taxes, and hotel taxes. The expenditures represent the majority of our operating costs. The spending out of the general fund is discretionary. And like all of our funds, we want to make sure that the general fund spending is balanced. We have 26 other funds. We have gas tax, housing in lieu, sewer funds. These are non-discretionary in nature. General fund plus the other funds equals all funds, which totals the city budget. The general fund budget is $28.75 million. On the revenue side, we were our revenue estimates are based on increased tax revenues due to a positive economy. We want to reflect the robust development activities that are occurring in our city. We want to also reflect any departmental program revenues as a result of our cost recovery measures. And we want to increase it also represents increased various fees and charges also to reflect cost recovery. On the expenditure side, we have the implementation of our new Economic Development Division and our 2015-16 work plan. Funding for the general plan and housing element, and we've also got a realignment of staff to better address current cost recovery measures, and also we want resources to address increased development activities. The general fund budget is laid out before you. The revenues are on top, the expenditures are on the bottom. The actual 15-16 proposed budget, or actually that number should be final budget, is before you, and again, $28.75 million on the expenditure side, $28.75 million on the revenue side. As you can see, the biggest part of our revenues tend to be our departmental programs revenues, which come in at 37%, followed by property taxes, which come in at 34%. The other taxes and sales taxes and transfers in make up the rest of the revenue picture. On the expenditure side, you can see how our departments are funded. You can see the public safety represents basically 51% of our general fund spending, followed by parks, beaches, and rec, and the other expenditure components. And by the way, if you have any questions, you're welcome to just raise a hand and let me know.
I have a question on the previous slide, actually, since you're sitting there. Actually,
Yes.
Go to the that one there. What was the due to the general government funds for expenditures? Looking at 2014-15 for the adopted and revised, and we increased 700,000 for this next go around, just thereabouts. What was that due to, primarily?
Okay, so, that was the implementation of our new economic development division, and there were some other increases that occurred in there as well.
The Economic Development Division, that's a paid staff position?
That's a program. That's a staffer and a program.
Staff ran a program. Where can I find these details? Are they on the website?
No. You work through Director Wermeister, and I will get you the information you need.
Okay.
What specifically are you looking for?
Well, it's a huge expenditure increase, and I was just curious of why we would increase that over 20% for the general government. I think a lot of people would ask that same question, so I was curious of what the increase was, because he went from 3,264 to 3,940,
Right.
which is right around 700,000, which is about 20% of the overall budget. So,
Well,
I was just curious.
Understood. Off the top of my head, there's the implementation of the new economic development program. There is also the transfer of staff. We transferred one staff from the police department to general government. Now, general government represents city council, city manager's office, city clerk, city attorney, finance, human resources, economic development, and IT. So those two things drove most of it, but I can get you the rest of the story.
Okay.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Any other questions on the revenues?
Before we had an adopted budget revenue of 161,000, but we didn't have any realization of that. What would that other revenues category entail? If you look at the chart that I was on before. The 161 there?
Those are, you're talking about the 14-15?
Yeah.
That 160.
What were we expecting to get in that we didn't get in?
Well, I think they came in, but I think they came in another category. I'd have to look into that. I think it was, again, one of our minor revenue sources.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Anything else on revenues? Anything on expenses?
What slide are we on? 7? No.
Okay. So the themes that we used to put together the budget, again, cost recovery was a big theme. We had a cost allocation plan and fee study that we based our increased fees on. We want to make sure that our annual expenses are less than or equal to annual revenues, and we want to live within our means. One-time money for one-time expenses, and we want to make sure that our financial transparency is as clear as we can get it. And so we will be presenting the long-term financial plan assumptions and the plan itself to council early next year. And the final 15-16 budget document is our best effort at ensuring that this budget is as transparent as we can get it. The actual budget document sits out on the city's website. It's a very large PDF, passed on June 22nd, 2015. And I'm going to take you through some of the pages that are in that document. Now, early on in the document, there's the 15-16 budget by the numbers. And what the intent here is that it pretty much lays out the budget in sort of graphic detail. And so one can see the entire appropriation between the general fund and the rest of the funds, the total revenues coming into the general fund and what percent is made of each, where your property tax dollar goes, where your sales tax dollar goes, what the total expenditures are for the city departments, and also we have a cost recovery diagram in the bottom right-hand corner. And so the whole intent here is to sort of provide the budget at a glance. The next section in the budget document is the council work plan. Earlier this year, council met down at the Pacifica PD EOC and developed a work plan for the 2015-16 fiscal year. These 3 pages lay out the council's work plan and lays out sort of their action items for this fiscal year. The layout of the 2015-16 general fund budget is there as well. And in addition to the 2015-16 budget, we also have the budget for all of the funds.
So back to the previous page. We don't have any surplus this last year. Like I guess in 2014, 2015, we had a surplus that went to reserves. Do we have any surplus that's going to reserves in 2015 or 16 that's allocated?
The reserve that's mentioned in 14-15 was the estimated reserve that I generated back in February of 2015. We're currently being audited, and when that audit is complete, we will find out exactly what that reserve is. As far as the projected reserve for 15-16, I'll have that in February of next year.
Next year, okay, great.
The all funds budget, AF1 and AF2. Now I'm going to take you to AF2 and show you the number that's circled. That 73.971 million represents the city's budget, our 15-16 budget. So when people talk about the budget, it is $74 million. Now, it just so happens the hot topic here in this budget is the general fund budget. So I'm going to slide you back to the previous page, and we'll go through the funds just a little bit. The funds are broken down by our special revenue funds, and these are revenues that flow into these funds that can only be used for those purposes. Capital project funds, again, special revenues that flow into these funds just for these purposes. We've got debt service funds, and those funds' sole intent or sole purpose is to pay the city's debt. We've got trust funds, and we've got enterprise funds, and that enterprise fund represents the operating fund for the wastewater treatment plant. And both 18 represents the operations, and 34 represents their capital replacement activities. That is followed by our internal service funds, and these are self-insurance funds that basically act like little businesses within the city. We also have a couple of motor pool funds as well. So the one thing that I wanted to mention while we're on this page, there's a certain amount of conversation in the community about the interpretation of this particular document. We've got a couple of funds, 3 funds in particular, that are showing red for their fund balance. Now, the column to the first numeric column on the left represents the estimated ending fund balance as of 6/30/2015. We will find out what those balances are when this audit is done. We have the next column is our adopted revenues, the next column is our adopted expenditures, and the next column is our estimated ending fund balance at 6/30/2016. Now, as you can see, Fund 38 is showing a deficit, and so this is our disaster accounting fund. And so due to various weather anomalies and various issues here in the city, we have had to spend from this account, or from this particular fund. When we spend from this fund, it is usually a big deal and it's usually a dire situation. And we're working with FEMA and CalEMA to get reimbursement for our efforts. And to my knowledge, we have been reimbursed for everything, and this just happens to be the city's share of those particular issues that we've dealt with in the past. And we moved down to the park and loo, started with a deficit of $34,000.
I may interrupt you. So what happens if that had a negative balance? When do we ever pay that back?
I'll get to that after I'm done.
Okay.
And so with the park and loo, we have a deficit of $34,000. It resulted when I believe we purchased some land a couple of years ago, and it drove the fund balance into the red. We have cut expenditures in order to bring that negative balance down. You see it goes from 34 to 9,796. The next red balance that you see is Fund 22. And so Fund 22, back in 2003, borrowed roughly $2.2 million from Fund 9. And by the way, the explanation of what I'm about to go through is on the bottom of the following page. And so monies were borrowed from one fund to another, and Fund 22, due to various reasons, found itself in a position where it could not repay that loan. And so this, as well as the other 3 negative fund balances that you see, council is aware of it. We have a directive from council to define the problem and come back to them with a payback plan. I believe it is on the work plan, and I believe that particular directive falls right under the development of the general plan. So we will be coming back to council with, it's actually number 5 on the work plan if you look back on page 11. So we'll be coming back to council with the story. Yes, ma'am.
On Fund 30, the ERAF funds, it seems like they never know whether they're going to actually get those funds or not.
Right.
Is that expected to continue for a while?
We have been told by the powers that be that those funds will come in when they come in. And we've been told not to rely on them for our ongoing operations because they could go down or disappear at any time. So this is why we decided to isolate them into a separate fund, and when they come in, they come in. Yes. And so I just wanted to make sure you were aware of the general story behind those funds and that we are looking into addressing the situation. But again, on page 14 here of your slide deck, there is more detail regarding the loan that took place from Fund 22, from Fund 9 to Fund 22.
So I have a question. Does City Council approve those loans from the different funds, from funds? Do you have to request that authorization to take from one fund for the next fund?
Typically, yes.
Is that a city mandate, or is that just a request that the city finance makes to the City Council just to be transparent?
I'm sorry?
Is that a mandate that you have to request the funds? You have to request the transfer from account to account, or is it something you just do out of general accounting principles?
Well, typically with loans, we want to make sure that council is aware and that council approves of the loans from fund to fund.
And then can you explain what the item number 27 is, this trust fund, the Roy Davies Trust Fund? Just out of
That is a fund that was left, or a sum of money that was left to the Parks and Rec, and Parks and Rec are only allowed to spend the interest from that principal that you see there.
So their interest is 0.1% per year?
Yes. That's what we're projecting. If you can find a better interest rate that a government can invest in, you let me know.
I was curious.
So that's the budget, roughly 74 million, and that's sort of the stories behind the budget. However, our fiscal future, we're still facing challenges. Our expenses are still growing faster than our revenues. We are bargaining with our various bargaining units. We have 9 units, so that impacts on our expenditures going forward. We have many unmet needs, our city streets, our facilities, various infrastructure. The good news is we do have economic development in play, and we're hoping that's going to pay dividends. I think it's already paying dividends. And any questions that you may have?
I think I asked all my questions during your presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And Chris, do we open it up if public has anything they want to say? Should we, as if it were an item?
I would recommend waiting until we actually hear the items in their
Okay.
totality.
All right, thank you. All right, well then, moving on. See, we can't move on. We do not have a quorum. Yeah, any consideration items, or I guess we can go to that.
Mr. Chair, if I would, I'd like to announce that we will schedule these items for the next regular meeting of the Planning Commission. Items 2 and 3, that's CDP 355-15, it's a coastal development permit, and site development permit PSD 805-15 filed by applicant and agent Mark Bucarelli to construct a 500 square foot addition to an existing 1,000 square foot single-family residence at 120 Santa Rosa Avenue. We will schedule that, and the next application, a specific plan 153-15, filed by Preston Fung to construct a new 3,111 square feet, 3-story single-family residence on a vacant lot at 323 Beaumont Boulevard for the next regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting on Monday, November 16th.
Thank you. So that was is there, I guess there's no, well, do I just need a motion for adjournment then?
There's no motions.
No, that's true. We can't pass that either, so.
Well, we do, since the commission doesn't have to vote, you can still undertake your commission communications, and I do have a couple other staff announcements.
Okay, all right. Any commission communications?
None.
And none on that. How about staff communications?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as I mentioned in relation to the public hearings, the next regular meeting of the Planning Commission will be on Monday, November 16th. In the event that we have a quorum, we will hear our agendized items. I also want to announce for the commission, on December 5th, Sonoma State University is holding its 32nd Annual Planning Commissioners Conference. I attended last year, thought it was a very interesting and beneficial event. There is a fee, it's an $80 registration fee, but it includes a continental breakfast and course materials. It was an interesting session. This year on the agenda, they have a discussion about joining land use and water resource decisions. a session on how to be a great planning commissioner, and then an update on recent significant land use law cases that would impact what the commission does. So
Is that an all-day seminar, or is it a half-day seminar, or what is?
It's half day. It's from 8:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Sonoma State University in Roanoke Park. So I have flyers here for the commissioners. I'll also email it out to you, and if any members of the public are interested, please let me know. It is geared, however, towards commissioners, elected officials, professional staff, and community members.
And that's December 5th?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other communications?
Yes, I have one more item. On December 7th, I just wanted to note that meeting, highlight it. It's an extremely important meeting for full commission attendance. We will be hearing 12 wireless facilities, the use permits for those on right-of-way utility poles in the Valley Mar neighborhood. You may have heard about this project. Due to conflicts of interest, 2 of our commissioners will be unable to vote on all of those items. 1 commissioner each will be conflicted out of voting on one of the applications. So we're likely hear a batch of 10 and then perhaps have 1 or 2 other hearings for those items for which there's a conflict of interest. So strongly encourage all the commissioners to please attend. If you can't, absolutely can't, please let me or Tina know. We are also bound by a 150-day shot clock under Federal Communications Commission regulations, and so it's very important that we hear those items on that date to allow sufficient time for the council to hear any appeal that might arise.
I remember last time we approved a cell tower, there was some guidance that you could provided in, I think it was a handout of what we could, in essence, look at as far as criteria for approval or non-approval. I don't remember what that document was, but I found it very helpful last time.
I believe it came from legal.
It came from legal?
Yeah, so you might look that up, but if I remember right, Catherine, do you remember that?
The trees.
There was a communique from legal to all the commissioners about what could be considered and what could not be considered, so.
I'm sorry, it's not sounding familiar to me. The other thing I questioned was how many years ago, because I think things have changed.
It was 2 years ago.
Was it 2 years ago? Because there's been some recent regulation in the last, went into effect, I believe, in June or July of this year, so something that's happened even more recently. So
all right.
whatever that was produced 2 years ago
Right.
may not still be in effect now.
It may not, yeah. If you could just check, we'd appreciate it then.
Of course, we'll
Yeah.
track
Yeah.
that down, and if we're able to, we'll attempt to get that updated as well.
Perfect, thanks.
Thank you.
And then,
Anything else?
no, and lastly, to the applicants and the public attending this evening, I apologize. The commission wasn't able to hear your items. It's not how we like to conduct business, so.
Small
apologies.
part of the commission.
Small part, yes. Thank you.
Yes, we do apologize, folks, and hopefully we'll have a full quorum on the next time. So, thank you, and good night.